All right, hello everybody. I can't see what's on the film right now because I turned my camera the other way. But we are going to be reading George MacDonald, and I'm over by a lake, and so I just figured we'd watch the ducks. And I can zoom in now, but I'm not going to be because I'm going to be reading. Where do the ducks go? Look at that. I mean, I can zoom in right now. Like water off of a duck's back. So welcome to this picturesque scene. The only thing is there's a freeway nearby, but that's okay because we have I have a mic today, and so you'll be hearing from my mic. Leia's with us. Leia, I can turn this towards her because Leia, say hi. She's like, what am I looking at? And so there's geese over there, and there's people doing maintenance stuff too, so we just have to deal with the other sounds. But hopefully this will be relaxing for you as well as this amazing story. All right, we're gonna start. I have Sir Gibbie. It's from the 1800s. It's George MacDonald was C.S. Lewis's spiritual director. And so every book he said he wrote, the guy that wrote the Narnia books was best friends with Tolkien. He said he quoted either directly or indirectly George MacDonald. And so let's begin. We're in the middle of this, but just trust that you're here for a reason. Here's the book again. I do that so people know I'm starting. So this is about a boy named Gibbie, and he can't speak. And they sort of dropped us in the middle of this new scene, so they're going to tell us what's happening, so you don't have to worry about not knowing. So Gibbie looked at Mr. Sclater. "He is going to study with me for a while first," answered the minister. "I'm glad to hear it." "He could not do better," said Miss Kimball. "Come, girls." And with friendly farewells, she moved on, her train after her, thinking with herself, what a bore the young fellow was. The young baronet. Yes, he must be a baronet. He was too young to have been knighted already, but wherever could he have been brought up? Oh, look at these awesome ducks. Wow. I was going to rent a swan for us over there, see these? But I was like, that's just, I mean, it's fun, but like, and whatever. Like, I'm just making my videos as they are. They're here, and anyway. We don't need fanfare sometimes. But I did make a video a long time ago called I Am a Swan from Now On. And it's a soul with a name. And I got it from a George MacDonald quote, right? Here's the swans. Swan boats. Here, I'll zoom in. Whoa. See? And it's, soul with a name. I got an acronym from God. And so anyway, I don't want to get in on any person. But he gave me that because George MacDonald said, don't teach your kids that they have a soul, teach them they are a soul and they have a body. And so God gave me that acronym in a meditation. I'm a soul with a name. Anyway, all right. Mr. Sclater had behaved judiciously and taken gentle pains to satisfy the old couple that they must part with Gibbie. So Gibbie was up on the mountains with Janet and Robert, shepherd and shepherdess. Well, she kind of took care of the home, and anyway, but they took him in as their own because he didn't have parents anymore. His dad died of drinking whiskey, and his mom died soon after childbirth sometime. Mr. Sclater had behaved judiciously and taken gentle pains to satisfy the old couple that they must part with Gibbie. One of the neighboring clergy knew Mr. Sclater well, and with him paid the old people a visit to help them to dismiss any lingering doubt that he was the boy's guardian legally appointed. To their own common sense, indeed, it became plain that except some such story was true, There could be nothing to induce him to come after Gibbie or desire to take charge of the outcast. But they did not feel thoroughly satisfied until Mr. Sclater brought Fergus Duff to the cottage to testify to him as being what he pretended. It was a sore trial, but amongst the griefs of losing him, no fear of his forgetting them was included. Of course, he would never forget them. They were his parents now. I hear a helicopter somewhere. I wonder why. Maybe over the freeway Yeah, it looks like a news helicopter, not a... All right, sorry about the noise. We'll do this. Okay, so it was a sore trial. Okay, so they knew he wouldn't be included. Yeah, forget them. Mr. Sclater's main difficulty was with Gibbie himself. At first he laughed at the absurdity of his going away from his father and mother and the sheep. They told him he was Sir Gilbert Galbraith. He answered on his slate, as well as by signs which Janet at least understood perfectly, that he had told them so and had been so all the time. And what differ does that make? He added. What differ does that make? What difference, right? What is that? Oh, that's the duck. Here, I'll just let it be. A sleeping duck. That's so nice. All right. Mr. Sclater told him he was, or would be at least, he took care to add, when he came of age, a rich man as well as a baronet. Rich men, wrote Gibbie, do as they like, and as they bide. He knew that rich men did as they like, so why does he have to go with him, right? Anyway, Mr. Sclater told him it was only poor boys who could do as they pleased, for the law looked after boys like him so that when it came into their hands, they might be capable of using their money properly. God does the same, you know. He gives you money tests. Almost persuaded at length that he had no choice, that he could no longer be his own master until he was 21, he turned and looked at Janet, his eyes brimful of tears. She gave him a little nod. He rose and went out, climbed the crest of Glashgar, and did not return to the cottage till midnight. In the morning appeared on his countenance signs of unusual resolve. Amid the many thoughts he had had the night before, had come the question what he would do with the money when he had it. First of all, what he could do for Janet and Robert and every one of their family, and naturally enough to a Scotch boy, the first thing that occurred to him was to give Donald money to go to college like Fergus Duff. In that he knew he made no mistake. It was not so easy to think of things for the rest, but that was safe. Had not Donald said 20 times he would not mind being a herd all his life if only he could go to college first? But then he began to think what a long time it was before he would be 21, and what a number of things might come and go before then. Donald might by that time have a wife and children, and he could not leave them to go to college. Why should not Mr. Sclater manage somehow that Donald should go at once? It was now the end almost of October, and college opened in November. Some other rich person would lend them the money, and he would pay it with compound interest when he got his. Before he went to bed, he got his slate and wrote as follows: My dear minister, if you will take Donald too and let him go to college, I will go with you as soon as you like. But if you will not, I will run away. All right. What is that? There's something in the water. I think it's a turtle, maybe. It looks like a turtle. Here, hold on. I hope you're doing well. God bless every single person here, anytime they get here. All right. I think it's a turtle. We saw these turtles in Turkey when I went to Turkey. Let's see. Is that a turtle? It looks like it. Anyway, We'll see. Maybe he'll come out. All right. I'll set this back down. All right. Look at that. When Mr. Sclater, who had a bed at the gamekeeper's, appeared the next morning, anxious to conclude the business and get things in motion for their departure, Gibbie handed him the slate the moment he entered the cottage, and while he read, stood watching him. Leah, here, hold on, sorry, Leah's all tangled up. Tangled up in you, even the best fall down sometime. Even the wrong words sometimes rhyme. You and I collide. Anyway. He says, I'm tangled up in you and that. Holy Spirit speaks to me through songs. If you're just now getting to my channel, then it's just, God will speak to you in all sorts of different ways. Yeah, it's a turtle because it's gone now. Wow. Wow. That was awesome. My kids always used to look for turtles. I'd take them on these hour walks. If we find a turtle, then, you know, anyway. So let's see. He entered the cottage, and while he read, he stood watching him. Now Mr. Sclater was a prudent man and always looked ahead, therefore apparently took a long time to read Gibbie's very clear, although unscholarly communication. Before answering it, he must settle the probability of what Mrs. Sclater would think of the proposal to take two savages into her house together. Aww. We're also doubtless. Hi. We're also doubtless, those two little kids. The presence of this Donald would greatly interfere with the process of making a gentleman of Gibbie. Unable to satisfy himself, he raised his head at length, unconsciously shaking it as he did so. That instant, Gibbie was out of the house. Mr. Sclater, perceiving the blunder he had made, hurried after him, but he was already out of sight. Returning in some dismay, he handed the slate to Janet, who, with sad, resigned countenance, was baking. Oh, I forgot. I didn't know if anyway. She rubbed the oatmeal dough from her hands, took the slate, and read with a smile. You might not take Gibbie for a young something cout, Mr. Sclater, and think to break him in, she said after a thoughtful pause, or you'll have to learn your mistake. There's not enough of himself in him for you to get a grip of him by the handle, and he knows what he wants, and he'll get it, sure as he'll be right. As Donald's my own, and I'm saying nothing. Sit you down. You'll not see Gibbie the day again, not this day, right? And so, is there no means of getting at him, my good woman? Said Mr. Sclater, miserable at the prospect of a day utterly wasted. I could give you sight of him, I dare say, but what better would you be for that? Given you had the lawyers of Embro at your back, you wouldn't touch Gibbie up on Glashgar. Like, he knows where everything is and how to go. Oh, here comes a big old geese. Leah, shh. Shh, shh, shh. Let the geese go. Here. Shh, shh, shh. Come on, this is it's a little house. We're visiting. Leah, shh. Shh. There we go. Shh. Leah. Leah, come on. I know, you want to run after. Here, Leah, let me give you pets. You're okay. You're okay. You're okay. Look at all the dogs. Look at all the geese. All right. There's a whole... gaggle. Is it a gaggle of geese? A gaggle of geese is coming. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. That was in a song once. It was a funny line. Leah, shh. Sorry if I'm saying it in this mic. All right. Okay, so shh, Leia, let her swim. Let it swim. Come on, shh. You're not going to go in the water, are you? Sorry, guys, I'd never taken Leia here before. Shh, 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 shh. I'll just have to keep petting her. Shh, shh, shh. Okay. So, what? But you could persuade him, I'm sure, Mr. Grant. You have only to call him in your own way, and he will come at once. What would you persuade him to, sir? To anything that's right. Gibbie doesn't need me persuading him if something's right. And for this is between you and the laddies. Just like as between brothers, I have no right to interfere with what's between the tither, all of you guys. The thing seems to me reason enough. What sort of lad is this son of yours? The boy seems much attached to him. He's a laddie that's been going over till a book ever since I've learned him to read, Janet answered. But he'll be here this night, I'm thinking, to see the last of poor Gibbie. And you can judge for yourself. It required but a brief examination of Donald to satisfy Mr. Sclater that he was more than prepared for the university. But I fear me greatly the time is at hand when such as Donald will no more be able to enter her courts. Unwise and unpatriotic are any who would rather have a few prime scholars sitting about the wells of learning than see those fountains flow freely for the poor, who are yet the strength of a country. It is better to have many upon the high road of learning than a few even at its goal, if that were possible. I don't really know what he's saying, but basically there are scholarships available, but they usually give them to certain other people. But anyway, as to Donald's going to Mr. Sclater's house, Janet soon relieved him. Nah, sir, she said. It would be to learn. It wouldn't be fitting to put a lad like him to that. It would be much safer for him, said Mr. Sclater, but incidentally. She's saying something in her Scottish brogue, so I'll put it right here so you can read it. It's down here. But it says, if I could help Donald till some company and the hunger for the better, I would be doubt of what's made of this world, said his mother. Donald's face flushed with pleasure at her confidence. She's basically saying there's nothing in the world that he can't get through or get, whatever. I don't doubt him going out in the world. Now he must get a garret room somewhere in the town, and there's anyway, and have his books there and everything, and Gibbie can go and see him when he can be spared. There's many decent women that would be pleased to take him in. So you'll see where he goes. Mr. Sclater seemed to himself to foresee no little trouble in his new responsibility, but consoled himself that he would have more money at his command, and in the end would sit, as it were, at the fountainhead of large wealth. Already with his wife's property, he was a man of consideration, but he had a great respect for money, and much overrated its value as a means of doing even what he called good. Religious people generally do, with a most unchristian dullness. They get caught up in money, unfortunately. People do. Right? That's like what I was just singing. Even the best fall down sometimes. Even the wrong words sometimes rhyme. I forgot who sang that. So love to them. Thank you for making that song. Anyway. So, even if he could do something good, we are not told that the master made the smallest use of money for his end. When he paid the temple rate, he did it to avoid giving offense, and he defended, they're talking about Jesus now, when he defended the woman who divinely wasted it. 10 times more grace and magnanimity would be needed wisely and lovingly to avoid making a fortune than it takes to spend one for what are called good objects when it is made. Wow. So he's saying 10 times more grace and magnanimity would be needed wisely and lovingly to avoid making a fortune than it takes to spend one for what are called good objects when it is made. When they met Miss Kimball and her young ladies, they were on their way from the coach office to the minister's house in Dower Street. Gibbie knew every corner, and strange was the swift variety of thoughts and sensations that went filing through his mind. Up this same street he had tended the wavering steps of a well-known, if not highly respected, town councillor. He used to walk the drunks home from the whiskey shops. That was the door where one cold morning of winter the cock gave him a cup of hot tea and a roll. The cook did, sorry, I thought it was going to be like a rooster or something. The cook gave him a cup of hot coffee and a roll for bringing him home. That was nice. It's sometimes old writing on this, so what happy days they were with their hunger and adventure. There had always been food and warmth about the city, and he had come in for his share. The master was in its streets as certainly as on the rocks of Glashgar. So that means God, God as the supreme master, providence, was watching over him just as sure as he did in the wilderness, he did in the city. Not one sheep did he lose sight of, though he could not do so much for those that would not follow, and had to have the dogs sent after them, right? A sheep, there's sheepdogs that go after them. I'm getting cold as well. Anyway, now we're on chapter XL. What is L again? Anyway, Gibbie was in a dream of mingled past. I thought it was 50. We can't be on 40, are we? Let's see. Yeah, the last few chapters were 38. And yeah, so that's 50 minus 10 is 40. All right, we're on chapter 40. XL, see? Okay. Mrs. Sclater. Gibbie was in a dream of mingled past and future delights when his conductor stopped at a large and important-looking house with a flight of granite steps up to the door. Gibbie had never been inside such a house in his life, but when they entered, he was not much impressed. He did look with a little surprise, it is true, but it was down, not up. He felt his feet walking soft and wondered for a moment that there should be a field of grass in a house. Then he gave a glance round, thought it was a big place, and followed Mr. Sclater up the stair with the free mounting step of the Glashgar shepherd. So he probably skipped stairs, Here you go. Oh, I might have another jacket in my bag. Anyway. Here, I'll let Leia go in front of us. Go ahead, Leia. Is she in the camera? Go over in the sun, Leia. There you go. Oh, here. There we go. All right. Forgetful and unconscious, he walked into the drawing room with his bonnet on his head. Mrs. Sclater rose when they entered, and he approached her with a smile of welcome to the house which he carried, always full of guests in his bosom, in his heart, right? Oops. He has a house full in his heart. Okay. He never thought of looking to her to welcome him. She shook hands with him in a doubtful kind of way. "How do you do, Sir Gilbert?" she said. "Only ladies are allowed to wear their caps in the drawing room, she added in a tone of courteous and half rallying rebuke, speaking from a flowery height of conscious superiority. What she meant by the drawing room, Gibbie had not an idea. He looked at her head and saw no cap. She had nothing upon it but a quantity of beautiful black hair. Then suddenly remembered his bonnet. He knew well enough bonnets had to be taken off in house or cottage. He had never done so because he had never worn a bonnet, right? But it was with a smile of amusement only that he now took it off. He was so free from selfishness that he knew nothing of shame. Never a shadow of blush at his bad manners tinged his cheek, he put the cap in his pocket, and catching sight of a footstool by the corner of the chimney-piece, which so strongly reminded him of his creepy, I think that's where he sat next to his dad. I can't remember. Let's see. By the cottage hearth, oh no, his little footstool, which, big lad as he now was, he had still haunted, that he went at once and seated himself upon it. From this coign of vantage he looked round the room with a gentle curiosity, casting a glance of pleasure every now and then at Mrs. Sclater, to whom her husband, in a manner somewhat constrained because of his presence, was recounting some of the incidents of his journey, making choice, after the manner of many, of the most commonplace and uninteresting. Gibbie had not been educated in the relative grandeur of things of this world, and he regarded the things he now saw just as things, without the smallest notion of any power in them to confer superiority by being possessed. Can a slave knight his master? Can a slave knight his master? Cause him to be knighted. Hi there. I'm so stoked we saw a turtle. That's so awesome. I haven't seen one in so long. Hold on, Leia's going around this stand again. Wow, I hope they don't come over here. Some geese try to get this nice dog. Okay. Okay, the Reverend but poor Mr. Sclater was not above the foolish consciousness of importance accruing from the refined adjuncts of a more needy corporeal existence, and his wife would have felt out of her proper sphere had she ceased to see them around her, and would have lost some of her aplomb, right, if she didn't have all her nice things. But the divine idiot Gibbie was incapable even of the notion that they mattered a straw to the life of any man. Indeed, to compare man with man was no habit of his. Hence, it cannot be wonderful that stone hearth and steel grate, clay floor, and Brussels carpet were much the same to him. Man was the one sacred thing. So man is the one sacred thing. Gibbie's unconscious creed was a powerful leveler, but it was a leveler up, not down. It brought everyone up, right? The sacredness of man. It's up from our belongings. What are they compared to the sacredness of God making us and Christ coming to redeem us? Anyway. The heart that revered the beggar could afford to be incapable of homage to position. His was not one of those contemptible natures which had no reverence, because they had no aspiration, they think themselves fine because they don't aspire to anything, right? Because they acknowledge nothing superior to their own essential baseness. This is different. Gibbie has a different attitude than that. To Gibbie, every man was better than himself. It was for him a sudden and strange descent from the region of poetry and closest intercourse with the strong and gracious and vital simplicities of nature, human and other, to the rich commonplaces, amongst them not a few fashionable vulgarities of an ordinary well-appointed house, an ordinary well-appointed people. But however bedizened, I don't know this word, humanity was there, and he who does not love human more than any other nature has not life in himself, does not carry his poetry in him as Gibbie did, therefore cannot find it except where it has been shown to him. Neither was a common house like this by any means devoid of any things to please him, if there was not the lovely homeliness of the cottage, which at once gave all it had. There was a certain stateliness which afforded its own reception. If there was little harmony, there were individual colors that afforded him delight, as, for instance, afterwards, the crimson covering the walls of the dining room, whose color was that of soft, deep, penetrable character, which a flock paper alone can carry. Then there were pictures, bad enough, most of them, no doubt, in the eyes of the critic, but endlessly suggestive, therefore endlessly delightful to Gibbie. It is not the man who knows most about nature that is hardest to please. However, he may be hardest to satisfy with the attempt to follow her, right? Look at all of this, right? There's just like, you can keep zooming in and zooming in and zooming in and looking at these trees and the leaves and never get enough of nature. That's in the Pride and Prejudice movie. They're like, what are men compared to rocks and nature? But we're talking about the sacredness of men. So she was just being funny. Hold on. There we go. No, I had it pretty even, but oh well. Here's the ducks again. Look at that. All right. The accomplished poet will derive pleasure from verses which are a mockery to the soul of the unhappy mortal whose business is judgment, the most thankless of all labors, and justly so. Certain fruits one is unable to like until he has eaten them in their perfection. After that, the reminder in them of the perfect will enable him to enjoy even the inferior a little, recognizing their kind, always provided he be not one given to judgment. A connoisseur, that is, one who cares less for the truth than for the knowing comparison of one embodiment of it with another. Like, a wine connoisseur who compares different wines to each other is different than someone who just tasted the best. And anyway, that is, one who cares less for the truth than for the knowing comparison of one embodiment of it with another. Gibbie regard then, as it wandered round the room, lighting on this color and that texture in curtain or carpet or worked screen, found interest and pleasure. Amidst the mere upholstery of houses and hearts, amidst the common life of the common crowd, he was and had to be what he had learned to be amongst the nobility and in the palace of Glashgar. Mrs. Sclater, late Miss Bonnaman, was the widow of a merchant who had made his money in foreign trade, and to her house Mr. Sclater had flitted when he married her. Flitted. It's italicized. So he had flitted. He went there when he married her. So he married someone that had a lot of wealth. She was a well-bred woman, much the superior of her second husband in the small duties and graces of social life, and already a sufferer in some of his not very serious grosseriets, regarded with no small apprehension the arrival of one in whom she expected the same kind of thing in largely exaggerated degree. So they're told he's like this wild boy that grew up on the streets. She didn't know what to expect. Oh, the little kids are coming back. Are these other ones on these scooters? Oh, he's so cute. He's like 2. But I don't put kids on, Let's see if I have a jacket. I have a hat. I'll do that. A beanie hat. It'll keep me warmer because I'm in the shade. All right. Oh, good. I put the... Here, I'll zoom in for a little bit. I don't know if we see any geese or anything. I like nature. Look at the just flowing water. That's awesome. Hold on, Leia. There we go. Okay. All right, so she said she did not much care to play the mother to a bear cub, she had said to her friends with a good-humored laugh. Just think, she added, with such a childhood as the poor boy had, what a mass of vulgarity must be lying in that uncultivated brain of his. Little does she know, you'll see. It is no small mercy, as Mr. Sclater says, that our ears, at least, are safe, right? Because he's mute. She's so silly. People judge in the most silly manners. I mean, I have in my past as well, I'm sure. God forgive us all. Poor boy. She was a woman of about 40, rather tall, of good complexion, tending to the ruddy, with black, smooth, shining hair parted over a white forehead, black eyes, nose a little aquiline, good mouth, and fine white teeth. Altogether a handsome woman, some notion of whose style may be gathered from the fact that upon the testimony of her cheval glass she preferred satin to the richest of silks, and almost always wore it. Now and then she would attempt a change, but was always defeated and driven back to satin. She was precise in her personal rules, but not stiff in the manners wherein she embodied them. These were indeed just a little florid and wavy, a trifle profuse in their grace. She kept an excellent table, and every appointment about the house was in good style, a favorite phrase of hers. In good style. She was her own housekeeper, an exact mistress, but considerate, so that her servants had no bad time of it. She was sensible, kind, always responsive to appeal, had scarcely a thread of poetry or art in her upper texture, loved fair play, was seldom in the wrong, and never confessed it when she was, but when she saw it, she took some pains to avoid being so in a similar way again. She held hard by her own opinion, was capable of a mild admiration of truth and righteousness in another, had one or two pet commandments to which she paid more attention than to the rest, was a safe member of society, never carrying tales. Well, that's good. She's not gossiping or telling tales of others. Was kind with condescension to the poor, and altogether a good wife for a minister of Mr. Sclater's sort. She knew how to hold her own with any who would have established superiority. A little more coldness, pride, indifference, and careless restraint, with just a touch of rudeness, would have given her the freedom of the best society if she could have got into it. Altogether, it would not have been easy to find one who could do more for Gibbie in respect for the social rapport that seemed to await him. Even some would gladly themselves have undertaken the task, admitted that he might have fallen into much less qualified hands. Her husband was confident that if anybody could, his wife would make a gentleman, out of Sir Gilbert, and he ought to know, for she had done a good deal of polishing upon him. So look, there's these ducks. He's what's the word? I can't think of the word. He gives compliments giving of his wife. All right. I'm still here. Anyway. The moving water is awesome. I love the wind and the trees and the leaves. We'll go back to this. Oh, maybe we'll zoom out a little so we get all of it. Leia, it's okay, honey. Do you want to come up next to me? Leia, come up here. No? Are there ants? There's ants. Oh, hopefully they're not too bad. Okay, I got you. All right. Do you want to get up on my lap? Come here. I'll get you water after this. I was going to bring her water over. You guys know. Give her water. But anyway, okay. Let's get going in this story. So, she was now seated on a low chair at the other side of the fire, leaning back at a large angle, slowly contemplating out of her black eyes the lad on the footstool, whose blue eyes she saw wandering about the room in a manner neither vague nor unintelligent, but showing more interest than of either surprise or admiration. Suddenly he turned them full upon her. They met hers, and the light rushed into them like a torrent, breaking forth after its way in a soulful smile. I hope my readers are not tired of the mention of Gibbie's smiles. I can hardly avoid it. They were all Gibbie had for the small coin of intercourse, and if my readers care to be just, they will please to remember that they have been spared many of he said and she said. Right? Because he can't speak, so he just describes a smile sometimes. Unhappily for me, there is no way of giving the delicate differences of those smiles. Much of what Gibbie perhaps felt, the more that he could not say it, and had got into the place where the smiles are made, and like a variety of pollens, had impregnated them with all shades and colors of expression, whose varied significance those who had known him longest. What do you want, Leia? You can't run over there. Hold on. Who knew him the longest, dividing and distinguishing, had gone far towards being able to interpret. In that which now shone on Mrs. Sclater, there was something, she said the next day to a friend, which no woman could resist, and which must come of his gentle blood. So now she's calling him gentle. Oh, because he's a gentleman, I forgot, right? If she could have seen a few of his later ancestors at least, she would have doubted if they had anything to do with that smile beyond its mere transmission from the first stock father of gentleness. Wow. That's, again, God again, I think. She responded, and from that moment the lady and the shepherd lad were friends. Now that a real introduction had taken place between them, and in her answering smile, Gibbie had met the lady herself, he proceeded in most natural sequence, without the smallest shyness or suspicion of rudeness, to make himself acquainted with the phenomena presenting her. He would have gazed upon a rainbow, trying perhaps to distinguish the undistinguishable in the meeting and parting of its colors, only, so he's sitting here looking at her. What do you want, Leia? Come here. Hold on. Are you stuck? Hold on. I gotta remember where we are. We're at the rainbows. Leia is she got stuck underneath I got her. All right. Leia. Come on, she's tangled up in it again. All right. There you go. Good girl. Good girl. Get your other arm out. Good girl. Okay, that's as far as I'm letting you go. Okay, so, so just like if he looked at the rainbows to see where one color ended and another one, only that here, behind was the all-powerful love of his own. He began to examine the lady's face and form, dwelling and contemplating with eyes innocent as a baby's. This lasted, but it did not last long before it began to produce in the lady a certain uncertain embarrassment, a something she could not quite understand, therefore could not account for and did not like. Why should she mind eyes such as these making acquaintance with what a whole congregation might see any Sunday at church, or for that matter, the whole city on Monday, if it pleased to look upon her as she walked shopping in Pearl Street? Why, indeed, yet she began to grow restless and feel as if she wanted to let down her veil. She could have risen and left the room, but she had no notion of being thus put to flight by her bear cub. She was ashamed that, hold on, a woman of her age and experience should be so, hold on, foolish. And besides, she wanted to come to an understanding with herself as to what herself meant by it. Wait, hold on. I think I missed a sentence. No, this is it. What herself meant by it. Like, what does it mean to be yourself? What does that mean? All right, I'll zoom in again. I hope these ants, I think I'm fine. All right. All right, so she did not feel that the boy was rude. She was not angry with him as with one taking a liberty, yet she did wish he would not look at her like that, and presently she was relieved. Her hands, which had been lying all the time in her lap, white upon black, had at length drawn and fixed Gibbie's attention. They were very ladylike hands, long-fingered, and with the orthodox, long, oval nails, each with a quarter segment of a pale, rising moon at the root. Hands nearly faultless, and I suspect considered by their owner entirely such, but a really faultless hand, who has ever seen? If you've ever read, I read on my channel here on YouTube, if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're somewhere else that's on YouTube, The Princess and the Goblin and the Princess and the Cardi. The second one, The Princess and the Cardi. The Cardi, who reminds me a lot, some of Gibbie, but you know, Cardi was given this special power by this woman who acts as like the Holy Spirit. She's a great-great-great-grandmother, but in the story, she's like the Holy Spirit. And so he has this ability to discern for the king, only for the use of the king, right? Because we're all kings and priests here, and God is the high, Jesus is the high king. But anyway, but he worked for a king in the land, but he had this ability to shake a person's hand and discern what kind of person they were, what if they were becoming more like a person or more like an animal. He could feel their animal nature and what kind they were, but he could only use it for the service of the king, not for himself. Anyway, so to Gibbie's eyes, there were such beautiful things that after a moment or two spent in regarding them across the length of the hairy hearthrug, he got up, took his footstool, crossed with it to the other side of the fire, set it down by Mrs. Sclater. Oh, here comes some kids, so I'm going to turn it towards myself. Anyway, I'll turn it towards this tree. Or Leia, we'll see. Oh, Leia's wagging her tail. Go say hi. Go say hi. Go ahead. Hi. Go on. It's over. It's facing the tree now. There. Good morning. Or afternoon. Oh no, it's still morning. Oh, I like the hearts. Those are cute. Good morning. I'm reading a story. There you go. There's the doggy. Have a great day. Oh, there we go. Okay, we managed that. The kids come by. I didn't know. They just want to walk by the lake, you know. Of course. Leia. All right, sorry. Okay, we're at a new location today. I've never been here for this. I went on someone had a charity walk here before, so I was here. I don't think I filmed anything. It was sweet. It was for this disease that they don't have a cure yet for, but they're looking for a child. That's the last time I was here that I remember. And it might have been the first time I was here too. So I remembered it because I was out here today. Anyway, So he came all the way across the rug. He got up, took his footstool, crossed with it to the other side of the fire, set it down by Mrs. Sclater, and reseated himself. Without moving more than her fine neck, she looked down on him curiously. Oh, Leia. Hold on. She looked down on him curiously. Wondering what could come next. And what did come next was that he laid one of his hands on one of those that lay in the satin lap. Then, struck with the contrast between them, burst out laughing. But he neither withdrew his hand nor showed the least shame of the hard brown, terry-seamed, strong, though rather small, prehensile member with its worn and blackened nails, but let it calmly remain outspread side by side with the white, shapely, spotless, gracious, and graceful thing adorned in sign of the humor it possessed in being the hand of Mrs. Sclater. It was her favorite hand. With a half hoop of fine blue-green turquoises and a limpid activity of many diamonds, she laughed also. Who could have helped it? That laugh would have set silver bells ringing in responsive sympathy, and patted the lumpy thing which, odd as the fact might be, was also called a hand, and short little pecking pats, which she did not altogether like touching, so painful a degeneracy from the ideal. Wow. But his very evident admiration of hers was went far to reconcile her to his, as was but right, seeing a man's admiration go farther to denote him truly than the sort of hands or feet either he may happen to have received from this or that vanished ancestor. Still, she found his presence, more than his proximity, discomposing, and was glad when Mr. Sclater, who, I forgot to mention, had left the room, returned and took Gibbie away to show him his and instruct him what changes he must make upon his person in preparation for dinner. Wow. All right, so he showed him to his room. When Mrs. Sclater went to bed that night, she lay awake a good while thinking, and her main thought was, what could be the nature of the peculiar feeling which the stare of the boy had roused in her? Nor was it long before she began to suspect that, unlike her hand beside his, she showed to some kind of disadvantage beside the shepherd lad. She was getting this notion that he had an advantage, in the way. I mean, he was out in nature and his soul was developed so much. I think I saw a turtle just poke its head up. I remember in childhood, my brothers and sister and I would just sit. We lived by a pond and we could just watch the turtles stick their heads out. It was a long time ago. Anyway. Was it dissatisfaction then with herself that this look had waked? She was aware of nothing in which she had failed or been in the wrong of late. She never did anything to be called wrong. By herself, that is, or indeed by her neighbors, she had never done anything very wrong, she thought, and anything wrong she had done was now so far away and so nearly forgotten that it seemed to have left her almost quite innocent. Yet the look of those blue eyes, searching without seeming to know it, made her feel something like the discomfort of a dream of expected visitors, with her house not quite in a condition to receive them. She must see to her hidden house. She must take the dustpan and broom and go about a little. For here are purifications in which king and cowboy must each serve himself. The things that come out of a man are they that defile him. And to get rid of them, a man must go into himself, be a convict, and scrub the floor of his cell. Mrs. Sclater's cell was very tidy and respectable for a cell, but no human consciousness can be clean until it lies wide open to the eternal sun and the all-potent wind, until from a dim-lighted cellar it becomes a mountain top. Wow. Wow. It's so good of God to clean us. I was just meditating on that verse, the last verse of Psalm 139. It says, "See if there be any harmful or wicked way in me, and lead me into your everlasting way." I think it's Psalm 139, like 24 or so. It's the last verse of Psalm 139. And Psalm 139 is like, you knit me together in my mother's womb. Behold, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Oh, we're just about to end when they're going to be cutting up trees, it looks like. Tree limbs, not trees. Chapter XLI, so 41. I just haven't done Roman numerals in a long time. Anyway, this is called Initiation, and I'm going to start it because we still have about 4 more minutes. Mrs. Sclater's first piece of business the following morning was to take Gibbie to the most fashionable tailor in the city and have him measured for such clothes as she judged suitable for a gentleman's son. As they went through the streets, going and returning, the handsome lady walking with the youth in the queer country-made clothes attracted no little attention, and most of the inhabitants who saw them, having by this time heard of the sudden importance of their old acquaintance, wee Sir Gibbie, and the search after him, were not long in divining the secret of the strange conjunction. But although Gibbie seemed as much at home with the handsome lady as if she had been his own mother, and walked by her side with a step and air as free as the wind from Glashgar, he felt anything but comfortable in his person, for here and there Tammy Breek's seams came too close to his skin. I don't know what Tammy Breek's seams. Oh, maybe what the clothes that he got. And there are certain kinds of hardship which, though the sufferer be capable of the patience of Job, will yet fret. Gibbie could endure cold or wet or hunger and sing like a mavis. He had borne pain upon occasion with at least complete submission, but the tight armholes of his jacket could hardly be such a decree of Providence, as it was rebellion to interfere with, and therefore I do not relate what follows as a pure outcome of that benevolence in him which was yet equal to the sacrifice of the best fitting of garments. You'll see, watch. As they walked along Pearl Street, the handsomest street of the city, he darted suddenly from Mrs. Sclater's side and crossed to the opposite pavement. She stood and looked after him, wondering. Hitherto he had broken out in no vagaries. Before that, he had not broken out in any vagaries. As he ran, worse and worse, he began tugging at his jacket, and had just succeeded in getting it off as he arrived at the other side in time to stop a lad of about his own size who was walking barefooted and in his shirt sleeves, if shirt or sleeves be a term applicable to anything visible upon him, with something of the air of the tailor who had just been waiting upon himself, but with as much kindness and attention as if the boy had been Donald Grant instead of a stranger. He held the jacket for him to put on. The lad lost no time in obeying, gave him one look, a nod of gratitude, and ran down a flight of steps to a street below, never doubting his benefactor an idiot, and dreading someone to whom he belonged would be after him presently to reclaim the gift. Mrs. Sclater saw the proceeding with some amusement and a little foreboding. She did not mourn the fate of the jacket. Had it been the one she had just ordered, or anything like it, the loss would have been to her not insignificant. But was the boy altogether in his right mind? She in her black satin on the opposite pavement, and the lad scudding down the stair in the jacket, were of similar mind concerning the boy, who, in shirt sleeves, indubitable, now came bounding back across the wide street. He took his place by her side as if nothing had happened, only that he went along swinging his arms as if he had just been delivered from manacles, from chains, right? Having for so many years roamed the streets with scarcely any clothes at all, he had no idea of looking peculiar and thought nothing more of the matter, right? He had this one outfit that was like overalls. Okay, so this chapter is called Initiation. I'm going to put the book away for the next time. Let's see. Let me turn this around for a second. All right. I wish you so much love. I hope I'm in the I'm sure I am. I wish you the best. Thanks for being here. Make sure to share and like with like-minded people so that this gets around to all the people it's meant to go to. Thanks for joining me in this new place. Look, they're fishing over there. All right, much love.